So much to talk about on Orange and Blue tonight. OBT2, I don't know. We got to get to it, Mace, because it's Troy Franklin time, and the discussion around Troy Franklin is very fascinating, especially, and we've got the clip, so we'll play it for you, Mace, but when Shawn Payton said, yeah, I think that connection's a little overrated, I was like, oh, wow. Well, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think the connection which manifested itself in Troy Franklin, along with Bucky Irving, being the receiving targets of Bo Nix at his private workout for the Broncos back in March. I think that may be the most important thing about it. And yes, we could see they had chemistry on Saturday when we watched them work out at Broncos rookie minicamp. But it doesn't seem like it's as important to Shawn Payton or even Troy Franklin as some might think.
Right. Maybe even to Bo Nix. We will have a show for Devon Vele. That's coming up on Friday. But like, it's not like Bo Nix was just peppering his guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's another good sign for Nix. So the connection with Franklin is there, but it's not like Nix was forcing things, and Shawn Payton's not going to set him up to force things.
Right. And I mean, ultimately in this offense, you're throwing to the guy who's open. That's another thing about it. You go through your progressions, you're throwing to the guy who's open, and you're trying to lead him to set up something good. And if you can't do that, you're settling for the check down, or you're quickly deciding to run and you're moving on. But it wasn't simply the Bo Nix to Troy Franklin show. He was spreading the ball around. You did see, tosses to the running backs, not just the rookie running backs, but Tyler Beatty, who was still eligible for Broncos rookie minicamp. He was out there making some plays too from the running back position. So, yeah, you watch Bo Nix and you watch the quarterback who did not seem fixated on the one target with whom he was familiar. He was simply throwing to where the play was designed, where the defense dictated you should go. And that's a healthy sign for a quarterback who you want to have as a point guard. But it also means that maybe, while the chemistry can help, maybe the whole chemistry background thing isn't as important as we thought.
Yeah, and before we get any further, Mace, I'm just going to have to play this from Shawn Payton because this is where he says it, and this is what we're reacting to. So everyone else, you get to see Shawn Payton talking about the Franklin-Nix combination.
Yeah, a lot's made of that. I get it. No one's asked me about the Ellis-Vele connection from Utah. Look, it certainly doesn't hurt. They're two young players working to improve, and then periodically on a play that they happen to. But I think, man, different system now, different routes, and I think that from being familiar with another player helps. But so much of that ends up being coincidence, Now, what wasn't a coincidence was, when we selected Bo, we had been to the pro day and went to a private workout, and at Bo's private workout, Troy was there, and a number of players, teammates, they didn't have to be, they were there. And so, you get to know these guys. The running back really made a good impression. And so after the first round, the next day, we're having lunch, and Troy hadn't been drafted, and I asked Bo, how's he, how does he learn? Just one more time through, take me through it, and so, but I think that, like if you didn't even know, you would have said, man, Vele seems to have a pretty good rapport with Bo today. In other words, I think maybe it's a little overblown.
There you go. I think that's fair for him to say that, Mace.
I think it is as well. I think it's interesting that Shawn Payton brought up the day after they drafted Bo Nix and asking Bo, how does Troy Franklin learn? Right? So it does tell you that while Franklin was on their radar, that they probably gave a little bit of special dispensation to the connection. If you're asking that question, you're getting a little bit more information. And maybe that bit of information is something that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And thus, there's a universe where if you don't draft Bo Nix and you're sitting there at the top of round 4, if you don't have Bo telling you this is how Troy Franklin learns, maybe you're not trading up to near the top of the 4th round to get him. Maybe you're standing pat and playing the wait and see game with your picks on that. It's really interesting to kind of consider the what if it wasn't Bo Nix, who was the number 12 overall pick of the Broncos.
Right. And I hate to be accused of being a Bo Nix stan again, but you heard it from Shawn Payton right there. Guys didn't have to be at the private workout, and they were, because they're there to support Bo. And just by doing that, Franklin got himself noticed by this team.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Shawn Payton also say that they like Bucky Irving too?
He's
Who
like,
also
the running
was
back
there?
was impressive. Yep.
Yes. Which, yeah, hey, they didn't get Bucky Irving, but they got Blake Watson. More on Blake Watson later on this week, too.
Yeah, it's on Thursday.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
It's
got a lot to say.
Hey, it's a who you know league, right? It's a who you know league, not just because of, the bonds that you can generate and you want to have somebody who you know is in your corner, but it's a who you know league because who you know can give you information. Bo Nix gave Shawn Payton some additional information. And then by the time they go through the draft, they decided Jonah Ellis instead of Troy Franklin on day 2. And some of that's a roll of the dice. Okay. Who's more likely to potentially be there on day 3, right? That's why you take Jonah Ellis over Troy Franklin. And the other thing also is you're doing positional value there, respectfully to wide receiver, edge rushers here, wide receivers here.
Right. And they've got a jam-packed wide receiver room already. Franklin adds to that. But what is Troy Franklin? And I feel bad for him, Mace, because the media scrum, I think there was 3 media scrums around Troy Franklin. So it's like the same questions, but just a different cluster because we were all over here and we were over there and then we're over there. So, I do feel a little bit sorry for Troy. But he did get to talk about Bo Nix more than once. Here's what Troy Franklin said on his college teammate.
How different is it working with Bo now in a pro environment versus college environment?
How different is it?
Or how the same is it?
I mean, I think it's pretty similar, obviously a little different because we're at a pro level now and stuff like that. But I would say it's not too much of a, difference for sure.
Does the comfort level aid in your transition to pros?
With being with Bo?
Yeah.
I mean, I would say regardless if I was with him or not, I'd be comfortable, so most definitely.
Interesting. So it didn't aid in the transitions, what he's saying, because he's saying he would have been comfortable regardless, right?
Right. Shows confidence.
Shows confidence. It also shows me something for Troy Franklin, that he wants to be his own man, and I don't think he wants to constantly be asked about the connection with Bo Nix. He wants to stand on his own 2 feet, be regarded for what he's doing. Look, unfortunately, though, the narrative is going to be Bo Nix, Troy Franklin. They came together. They were both at Oregon, blah, blah, blah. Over time, I think that's going to fade. And not that their connection isn't going to matter, but I think it's going to be less about, they had this background as college players, and more, this is their body of work in the pros. But yeah, it was interesting. I think there was a little edge to Troy Franklin, not that he would say it explicitly, but hey, let's talk about me and what I can do.
Right.
Not the guy who's number 1, who's the first round pick. Right.
Mm-hmm. To quote 89 Batman for the millionth time, why do they get a load of me? So where do they get a load of Troy Franklin? I think it can be special, Mace. I think it can be really special. And it's one of those things like, okay, I'm thinking of college teammates, pro teammates, what? Burrow, Chase, right? Am I correct in that? Okay,
yes.
So how often are those guys just go out and ball? So just go ball, and then no one's going to ask how's the connection with Bo Nix? We're going to see it.
Now they came in a year apart, of course, because
Right.
Chase was 2021 draft, Burrow was 2020. So I think maybe that changed the dynamic of how it was, right? Joe Burrow had already kind of been through the whole thing, and Jamar Chase was a first round pick, so he came in with a level of prominence. And oh, by the way, he was a first round pick based on a 2020 senior season, or not senior season, but a last campaign at LSU without get all the names, without Joe Burrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think with Troy Franklin, it's just kind of coming in at the same time. And then the workout together, it's like, oh, I mean, they must be joined at the hip. I mean, I think they work well together and I think they like each other, but it's not like, I don't necessarily think that they're like, always together. Right. And that's okay. I mean, it's a big locker room with a lot of personalities, and, it's about what, not everyone's going to be BFFs. It's how you work well together. The two of them do appear to work very well together, even though I think Troy Franklin is like, hey, it's great having Bo Nix. It's great having a quarterback that I know can get the ball to me on rhythm on time, but I'm my own man, and that's okay. There's a little bit of an edge to him, and I like that.
Yeah, I like that for a lot of players, wide receiver especially. And the common thread through the draft is like no dummies. They're drafting players that are motivated, that know how to work hard. And you mentioned the mental side with Franklin. So let's play this. Troy Franklin talking about the mental side of his game, and you get more clues as to what kind of young man he is.
The mental side of it, what do you have to do to kind of ingest and learn everything they're throwing at you to be able to execute on the field at practice?
Just remembering your rules, most definitely.
What are your rules? What do you mean by that?
Just kind of, when we have certain play calls, got to be in a certain alignment, and obviously, like in the play call, though, there's something in there that tells you your rule, so most definitely just remembering your rules helps you.
I like that because he's developed a system mentally that allows him to quickly ingest, process, and apply.
I like that. Congest, process, apply.
Ingest, process, apply. Like, I think, sometimes it's figuring, when they're throwing all this stuff at you, you can be daunted. Like, how am I going to get all this down? How do I distill this down in a way that allows me to quickly go through this and commit as much of this to memory as possible, and committing it to memory and then applying it? That's the final stage, is application, of course, on the field. And I like that. Like, that's an answer that comes from finding out what the best mental process for him is. Some players don't get to that point ever in having a refined mental process. That answer reveals that Troy Franklin actually has found that. That alone is going to give him a leg up. And oh, by the way, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier when Shawn Payton was asking Bo Nix about how Troy Franklin learns.
Right.
It's so much of this, so much of the Broncos evaluation process, and so much of what they prioritize and who they bring in. It's about the brain more than anything physical.
Yep. Complicated system for Shawn Payton. Troy Franklin's ready to get it. And Mace, that answer honestly reminded me of Bo Nix's answer of like, I just take it one play at a time. I make sure I get this play down and I go to the next one. And that's kind of similar to the rules that Franklin told you about in the locker room.
Sensible bites, right? When you're eating a meal. You may have heard that when you were a kid. Don't wolf your food down. Sensible bites.
Right.
Or, chew your food. Focus on the process. And the process can be boring, but it's necessary. The old cliche, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You just gotta go through it. How do you learn a voluminous playbook? Which it's not so much a playbook. It's on an iPad now. How do you learn that? One play at a time. Kind of like on the field. You take it one play at a time. When you're learning your role, you learn one play at a time. And then, like he said, you have those rules as you learn a scheme, and then you understand, quickly. You only have to hear like one part of it to know, this is what I got to do. This is where I've got to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In this offense, by the way, nomenclature wise, I'm sure you've heard Cease when Shawn Payton's been mic'd up and it's calling a play.
Talking to Drew Brees, yeah.
Yes. I mean, it's not strictly West Coast Bill Walsh, but it does have elements of that in that the quarterback carries the onus and in his instructions is giving out the calls to everybody. And somewhere in that call is what your role is. The quarterback has to have it straight. And then when you're a receiver or a running back or a tight end or on the O-line, you're listening for one or two words, basically, that are tailored to you, compared to like the Earhart-Perkins nomenclature, where most of the play calls in that are 3-word calls. That's what they ran in New England. That's what Tom Brady ran for most of his career, etc. It's even what they've done around here from time to time over the years. It's what they were doing when Josh McDaniels came in, for example. So, and actually when Peyton Manning came in, it was translating a lot of his concepts into the Earhart-Perkins language that had been there since 2009 when Mike McCoy come in as offensive coordinator. So basically Franklin's kind of figured out what he has to do. Now it's a matter of taking his process, applying it to a more voluminous playbook. But you don't have to go to class anymore. Your job's football. You got time.
You better be on that iPad. And we know that Troy Franklin is motivated, and whether you want to go all the way back to Thurman Thomas, when everyone passed on him in the first round and he made everybody pay with a Hall of Fame career. Not saying Troy Franklin's a Hall of Famer, but I had a second-round grade on him. I expected him to go around the Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman level, and I like both of those receivers as well. So when he falls to the fourth, one, it's shocking, and two, it makes him motivated. Here's what Franklin had to say.
Most definitely, I think I just like to self-talk to myself and remind myself, to see how all the other 31 teams viewed me or whatever the case is, So I kind of just, let that sit in my head, and chip on my shoulder type deal,
Oh, chip in the shoulder, check.
Yes. You go through Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy, Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette, Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, Jalen Polk, Adonai Mitchell, Malachi Corley, Jermaine Burton, Roman Wilson, Jalen McMillan, Luke McCaffrey. 16 receivers, if I'm counting correctly, off the board before Troy Franklin.
Chip on the shoulder.
You know what? Actually, it's funny. Let me just count it again. I want to make sure I'm right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. I asked him if there was any significance to 16, and he said, no, it's what they gave me. And look, there's a case for that because there weren't a lot of available numbers for wide receivers.
Right.
16 receivers taken above Troy Franklin.
Serendipity. It's the universe, Mace. The universe talking to
There you go. Do I think he'll stick with 16? No, I think he'd love to get 11 at some point. But that's interesting to think about. He admits he's got a chip on his shoulder from that. So something to consider. He's 17. I guess that's better than being 37.
All right. And Troy Franklin, we know being the Z, because that's what Shawn Payton said at the post-draft presser, or we have envisioned him or vision as he's a Z, means he can use that speed, the trademark speed that he has. We saw it on Saturday. And of course, in the locker room, this is 16 seconds, by the way, Troy Franklin did talk about playing fast.
I would say kind of just, just playing fast, literally. Yeah, that's pretty much it, Everybody here has already seen a lot of the stuff we're doing plenty of times, so you just kind of got to just match the speed and just play fast, not think, so yeah.
Play fast, not think. And that's the final level of it. If you know it so well, you're just doing and you're reacting. You're reacting to the coverage giving you. You're reacting to the play call it's presented to you. Unfortunately, you don't have time to really think. If you think, you're going to get drilled. Mm-hmm. It's got to be reaction. And this is where the rookies, they've got catching up to do. the guys who were around here last year, they've got a leg up. The guys that have already been working out that came in over the last few weeks, like Josh Reynolds, they've got a little bit of a leg up as well. If you're going to contribute, you've got to do some catching up. So, like, for example, Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims Jr. Mims has had a year to grasp things. Franklin's got to close the gap in a hurry. He's got to be as fast in terms of the process of learning as he is in terms of how he runs his routes.
Franklin is a good one, and I will end on this, Mace, as we wrap up our special edition of Orange and Blue today. And when we talk about Nix, yes, there's going to be Wilson comparisons. When we talk about Franklin, yes, there will be Jerry Jeudy comparisons. But I say this, knowing I believe the Broncos are going to have not their hands full monitoring social networking with Troy Franklin. You're not going to see the workout videos getting open on the beach, like all those things I wrote about it in Mile High Monday, like all those things that a lot of receivers do. God bless it. It's a younger generation, right? I'm not on TikTok, whatever. But with Franklin, his social networking is clean. It's all business.
Yeah, well, he did put that one clip out during the draft that was a little bit bold.
What was the clip?
It was like, some curses, etc. It didn't. It was one of those that goes up for a bit and it comes down like an Instagram story or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, so I wouldn't say all business. He basically, I'd have to go back and find it. I'm sure some people out there remember it and remember what he said, but that part you can kind of do without. I'm sure he's been counseled on that. That wasn't it. That moment wasn't a very anonymous donor moment.
We'll see what Troy Franklin can continue to do as the Broncos continue through their offseason. But before we continue, Mace, with more of our shows, huge schedule for you, including a live Wednesday show for schedule release at 6 p.m. So we'll have a regular show at 4 p.m. Then 6 p.m. Mason and I will be live as the Broncos unveil their schedule in the NFL. We're going to go through the games. We're going to talk about them. Be a special live edition there. Before we get to all the stuff, Mace, how do they help us out on YouTube?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell
so that you never miss a vid. That's right. He's Andrew Mason. Follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. And would you please stay frosty